here with Kerry Pharr. A little different show than normal for Redefining Aging. We're usually out on the field. We're usually filming some event and talking to people about how maintaining their health and fitness has enhanced their quality of life. But I've just met Kerry, and we've got a lot in common. My boxing career, which was 10 years, master boxing, of course, growing up with Randy Shields and his dad, Sonny Shields, and from the Army, learning with my first introduction to boxing. But Kerry has quite a background in boxing. So you might tell us a little bit about that, because it certainly covers a lot of your history. And then he has in fact, his ministry, In Your Corner .tv is something you want to go to, and his book, which we'll put a link to, so those of you would like to purchase it. But tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my parents came out of the cotton fields of Alabama in the 1950s, moved to a little town called Detroit, Michigan. My dad went up there to make the big money, $1.50 an hour back in those days, instead of working for $4 a day in the cotton fields. And, it was not a good time for me. I was sexually abused and mugged in Detroit before I was 7 years of age. Oh. And then I can remember a time, John, living in a neighborhood in Detroit, and an older white man, probably my age, when I was a kid, I was 7, 8 years old, he looked at me and said, "Why don't you hillbillies go back where you came from?" And so kind of like what you talked about, where people tried to bully me. I mean, the black kids chased me home from school because I was from Alabama. And then when I'd go back to Alabama, they'd say, "Well, you're a Yankee." And I remember one day 10 kids got together, and they were all in the 6th grade, and I was in 5th grade. And the biggest one, who probably should have been in the 9th grade, said, "You're a Yankee." I said, "No, I'm not. I was born in Alabama." "No, you're a Yankee. And because you're a Yankee, you got to fight one of us." And so he was the biggest one. I said, "Okay, well, I'll fight you." Well, this guy bounced me around because you're so much bigger than me, like a rubber ball.
Right.
And when it was over, though, the boys never called me a Yankee again.
That's you just got to stand up half the time, and they don't want to get hurt, so they'll back away. If they think they can intimidate you, they'll keep at it.
Yeah, and so from that point, we moved to Kenosha, Wisconsin, 50 miles north of Chicago. Yeah. And in those days, the Golden Gloves were big, and my best friend's cousin, Larry Freeman, had been a 3-time champion. So he got us involved in the sport of boxing. And over the next 40 years, I became, I guess I had a love-hate relationship with the sport of boxing. I loved it, but it really was an idol to me. Yeah. There came a time in my life where I had to go to the Lord and say, "Lord, I've idolized this sport." But it gave me an identity, and it gave me a lot of self-confidence, even to this day, because I'd been in the ring with world-class fighters and sparred with them and fought, in the boxing ring. I felt it just gave me a great deal of confidence. So it's helped me in that respect. But I learned, after I learned how to fight, that people started using guns and knives. So, they don't bring a boxing glove to a knife or a gunfight, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're always on the lower end of that fight. But you've maintained health and fitness all these years, and you've had a lot of experiences with professional boxers. Have you seen that that's impacted the way you've looked at your spiritual life? Has it changed, or have you been able to take your spiritual life and infuse it into those relationships?
I think so. I was a professional boxing trainer. Actually, what happened, how I got into professional boxing, in 1982, I'm about 30 years of age, and I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, and there was a world-class fighter there by the name of Jimmy Hare, who fought out of California for the early part of his career, and I'm sure him and Randy Shields, your friend, know each other intimately. And I went to the gym one day just to get in shape, and Jimmy says, "Hey, would you spar with me?" And so I started sparring with him. And then after 2 or 3 months, he said, "I've got a fight in Chicago next month. Would you go and work my corner?" So I went and worked his corner and stayed with him for about a year, helping him in the corner and stuff. And so I met a lot of boxing people because he was, he'd fought in some big venues. And so I decided after that I was going to start training young men And at this time, I'm a Christian. I'm living for the Lord. And I thought, well, let me start a boxing gym. And I lived outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And we started a boxing gym and started working with amateur boxers. And some of them turned pro, and some of them became world champions.
Yeah.
And we went all over the world. And everywhere I went, we told people about Jesus. We shared the gospel. But I worked the corner against 6 heavyweight champions. And one of my guys fought the great Tommy Hearns, and we fought him in Aloha Stadium. And
Hitman Hearns.
yeah, we fought him in Hawaii. It was, it was a wonderful experience. But I used to tell the guys, one of these days I'm going to walk away from the sport and tell people about Jesus. I'm going to quit teaching guys how to fight. And they'd laugh and say, oh, yeah, right. And so after my first wife died of breast cancer in 2001, I walked away from the sport. And, I've used the knowledge. We've produced a documentary called Fight the Good Fight, where we've interviewed 10 or 12 different world champions over the years, and we put a program together. And then, as you'll see the picture of Evander Holyfield, the great Evander Holyfield, and I on the cover of this book, we spent 2 days with Evander in Miami and did a documentary on Evander as well. And both of those are available at our website, inyourcorner.tv.
Inyourcorner.tv. In fact, I've got a picture with me and Holyfield when he was in Chattanooga. Great guy. I don't know him real well, but just the time that I spent with him, I enjoyed just hearing his story a little bit.
He's had some struggles in life. I remember talking about Evander as, with somebody that was interviewing me. Actually, it was a radio program in Canada, and I was talking about the faith of Evander Holyfield, and he said, well, look, this guy's been married X amount of times, and we've all struggled, we've all sinned.
Absolutely.
But the thing that I always admired about the great Evander Holyfield was every time he came into that ring, on his boxing trunks it said, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yeah.
But the most important thing that I heard from him, when I was interviewing him, we talked about Mike Tyson biting a piece of his ear off.
Yeah, right.
And he said, I had to forgive him. Yeah. And so I thought that was wonderful, because God says that we have to forgive people regardless of how badly they treat us.
Yes. And I was surprised. Holyfield isn't as big as I imagined him to be. When I met him, he just isn't that dominating huge figure.
But he beat those dominating big figures up. Yeah,
he did.
He was about your height, 6'2", and I think he probably got up to 215, 218, with the weights and everything. But I mean, geez, he fought Lennox Lewis. He was
right.
6'6". He fought Riddick Bowe. Huge men, and beat them.
Yeah, he was quite a guy. Your spiritual walk, can you tell us how that manifested itself in your life, what it's meant to you over the years?
Absolutely. I got to spend last night with my daughter and her family for her birthday, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But it reminded me, first of all, let me say that I was a kid that was in trouble growing up. I was a misfit, kicked out of school. I was arrested for car theft when I was 15 years of age.
That's a similar story. We stole a car from a junior high teacher and then wrecked it on Topanga Canyon, as a kid. Similar?
we did what we did was we'd go around, we'd look for these old 55 and 56 Chevrolets. If they didn't turn it off, you could turn the switch on and start it.
It was a 55 Chevrolet.
And we would drive those around for 2 or 3 hours, and then at the end of the night we'd bring it back. So we never really stole a car. We always brought it back.
Borrowed it without permission.
But interestingly, I wasn't even with the guys the night they got caught. 3 or 4 of my buddies, they got caught, and they said, well, Kerry's done this with us for years. And it wasn't for years, but for months. And so they called me in, and I was so young and dumb, I didn't even tell the judge. Judge, I wasn't even with them, but they put us in jail for several days, and he suspended my right to drive for a year. I wasn't even with them. I wasn't even caught in the act, but because they said I was with them before, I got in trouble. And then I was also brought into the police station for assaulting a guy when I'm like 15 or 16 years of age. So I grew up with a very angry spirit, but my mother forced me to go to church from the time I was about 11 years of age. And there was a man by the name of Wally Block that was a wealthy man, and we had nothing. My dad went up north to work in the auto factories, and he made decent money, but he was a gambler, and he would drink his money up every weekend. Whatever he made, he'd go out and he'd party all weekend. And so I grew up in an environment that wasn't good. Dysfunctional. But I went to this gentleman, Wally Block, came to me. He had been so good to me. He would come by my house, and we never, ever went to a restaurant when I was growing up. We would drive from Wisconsin to back where we're from in Alabama, and my dad might stop at daylight and stop at a cafe and let's get breakfast or something. But I don't remember a time where our family ever went out for a meal. Yeah. And Wally Block was a wealthy man, and he loved me with Christian love, and he knew I was a troubled young man. He'd come by and he'd take me out to eat. And I thought, man, Wally is amazing. So the summer that I turned 16, he said, I want you to go to a Christian camp and I'll pay your way. And I didn't want to go to a Christian camp.
Yeah.
But Wally said, I want you to go to a Christian camp. And Wally had been so good to me. I said, Wally, I'll go because of you. Yeah. So I went to that camp that summer and almost left that camp. But on Thursday of that week, I walked down the aisle and gave my life to Jesus Christ. But after I did that, I kept hanging out with my old buddies.
Yeah.
I lived a good Christian life for 3 or 4 months, and then I walked away from the Lord, and sadly, I went deep into the drug culture and alcohol and partying and all of the stuff that goes with it for the next 8 years. And then I was married. I married a girl that lived in the same trailer court we did when we were 10 years of age, and she was my childhood sweetheart. We married at 20, and we had a child, my daughter Christy, whose birthday party I attended yesterday. Yes. She was 2 years old. She's sitting in her high chair, and I looked at that little girl, and God spoke to me and said, if you don't get your heart right, that girl might never know me. Yes. So because of the love of that child, I confessed my sins and rededicated my life to the Lord. And that fall, I enrolled in a Christian university in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so I've been in Tennessee and been trying to live for the Lord ever since.
Isn't that something? And he opened that door for you, sovereignly controlled certain circumstances, knew your heart, and now you gave your heart to him, and now he's used you all these years to promote his truths and his kingdom.
I think so, and I want to be perfectly honest, John, because I think up until the time I was probably 31 or 32, I backslid a time or two and smoked dope, and it was a real struggle for me up until I was about 31 or 32, and it seemed like the Lord just kept calling me back. And I think I can honestly say from the time I was 31 or 32, I've followed him as faithfully as I could and have never gone back to the things of the world. I walked away from them, I repented, I turned my back on them. And so that's 40 years anyway. I've been doing my best, so. And
people need to hear that because we all fail, we all struggle, we all have difficulties, but he's still there.
Yeah.
And he's patient. He lets us go down the wrong trail, make wrong choices, and he reaches his hand down and lifts us back out. And there comes a point in time when we're so convinced that that's the only way to live life that that doesn't entice us anymore. There's a period of time in our lives, drugs, alcohol was attractive, the parties, the women, all that stuff were attractive. He takes it away. But
yeah, you're right, John. Except I still think those women are attractive. Now that other stuff, that other stuff, I have no desire for. And
but it's for the one woman that God put in your life.
Yeah, and I'm just joking about that. But I thought I'd mention that. Yeah. But you're right, my brother, and I appreciate you. And because you're a manly man, you're a man that was in the 82nd Airborne. I mean, it takes a man's man to do that. And you won a boxing championship 10 years in a row. So, and then you've done triathlons and all of this stuff. You've been involved in so many things.
And all the glory goes to God.
Amen. But I mean, you've done some things that other people have only dreamed of doing.
he opened those doors and he created that opportunity, and I just pray that I stay in the center of his will, keep going down that road. If someone would have told me back in my 30s that one day your whole life is going to be devoted to serving the Lord, I said, man, you are a lunatic. I'm out for me. It's my life. I'm going to do, I've got my own set of priorities, and that'll never be me. But boy, he changes things, and thank God he does.
There's that song, He's Still Working on Me.
Yeah, right.
And even in my 70s, he's still
Absolutely.
working on me, brother.
I hear you. Anything else you want to tell that audience out there that?
Well, I would tell our audience to go to your website. Tell me what it is again.
Redefiningaging.us is.
Yeah, and he'll send you a coupon. You'll be 20 years younger right away, right?
But I want them to go to your site as well, inyourcorner.tv. Great material, great book. I've only read a little, so I'm looking forward to the rest because we're new brothers in the Lord, newly know you. So I'm just so it amazes me how God opens doors and brings people into your lives that just boosts you up and gives you more encouragement.
Well, John, I want to tell you it's been a real pleasure, and I thank you for joining us at our studio today.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you and I will be doing many things together
I hope so.
for the rest of our days, my brother.
Great, I love it. God
Thank you.
bless you.
Thank you for having me on your program.
Well, thank you. We want to thank you for watching redefiningaging.us. I'm John Disterdick, your host. And our goal for the series is pretty simple. We just want to enhance the quality of people's lives. So if you know of an event that you think would be one for good for us to cover, please fill out the form on our website, and not only the event and what it is, where it is, when it is, and if there's a person you know that you think would be a good person for us to do a testimony on in some event, please let us know. And if you want a fuller description of my testimony, you can either go to johndisterdick.com and look under ministry, or you can go here at redefiningaging.us. We appreciate your viewership. God bless, and hope to see you on more shows.